White pawn marches to e4. Black pawn marches to g6. White pawn marches to d4. Black bishop marches to g7. White knight marches to c3. Black pawn marches to a6. White pawn marches to a4. Black pawn marches to b6. White pawn marches to h4. Black pawn marches to h5. White knight marches to f3. Black bishop marches to b7. White knight marches to g5. Black pawn marches to e6. White queen marches to f3. Black knight marches to h6. White bishop marches to e3. Black knight marches to c6. White pawn marches to d5. Black knight marches to b4. White queenside castling. Black queen marches to e7. White pawn marches to d6. Black pawn captures pawn at d6. White bishop captures pawn at b6. Black rook moves sideways to c8. White bishop retreats to d4. Black bishop captures bishop at d4. White rook captures bishop at d4. Black pawn marches to d5. White pawn captures pawn at d5. Black knight marches to f5. White rook moves sideways to c4. Black kingside castling. White pawn marches to g4. Black pawn captures pawn at g4. White queen captures pawn at g4. Black knight captures pawn at d5. White pawn marches to h5. Black rook captures rook at c4. White bishop captures rook at c4. Black knight retreats to f6. White queen retreats to h3. Black bishop captures rook at h1. White pawn captures pawn at g6. Black pawn captures pawn at g6. White queen captures bishop at h1. Black knight marches to h5. White queen moves sideways to g1. Black king marches to g7. White bishop retreats to d3. Black knight marches to f4. White bishop captures pawn at a6. Black pawn marches to d5. White knight retreats to f3. Black pawn marches to e5. White knight retreats to d2. Black pawn marches to e4. White queen moves sideways to e1. Black queen marches to f6. White bishop retreats to b5. Black knight marches to d4. White king moves sideways to b1. Black rook moves sideways to c8. White knight marches to b3. Black knight captures knight at b3. White pawn captures knight at b3. Black queen marches to e5. White pawn marches to a5. Black queen moves sideways to f5. White king marches to a2. Black pawn marches to d4. White queen captures pawn at e4. Black pawn captures knight at c3. White queen marches to b7 and gives check. Black king escapes check at h6. White bishop marches to d7. Black queen captures pawn at a5 and gives check. White king escapes check at b1. Black pawn marches to c2 and gives check. White resigns and black wins the game.